It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Thursday, September 14th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have sermons in the sky, the Q&A word study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? Yes, it is Thursday. It is the end of the meat of the week. Yes, this is basically the end because Friday, you know how Friday is. We're so happy because we know by the end of that workday we're done. But for me, Thursdays is my last day, and of course, it's the weekend for me from Friday and Saturday. So I'm super happy about Thursdays too. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment below to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up, support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message title, Learn From Me, and of course, the one who broke the seal. Very, very great message this week. Hope you guys enjoyed that Monday word study. Of course, I will have the Wednesday message word study tomorrow as we do every Friday, so look forward to that also. Last night, what did I do? Last night, I actually had, it wasn't like a real birthday dinner, but all the people who had their birthdays in September had a dinner last night. We went to like some Greek restaurant. It was pretty good too. And 5 of us in the church born in September had dinner together. Well, one couldn't make it at the end, but 3 of us are all the same age, which is kind of cool. 3 of us are born 1978, and then the rest were like much, much younger than us. But it was a fun night. And we had dinner together. But what we did as a commemoration, I brought this up. I said, hey guys, just for fun, let's just buy a lottery ticket together. It's kind of a symbolic gesture for all the September babies. And of course we win. We split it 5 ways. But the funny part is we're not going to win. The drawing is tonight. We're not going to win. I already know we're not going to win. I am not taking this seriously. But the one thing I do like about buying a lottery ticket is it brings about such fun talking points and conversations. Like, what would you do if you won kind of thing? Like, oh man, how much is it? So even for the 5 of us, this lottery, if we win, which I know we're not going to win, right? They said if we win, you win $12 million each because it's a $60 million jackpot. So whoa, it's kind of cool, right? So it's really funny because when we had the conversation during the meal, it's funny because we're all excited, oh, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get. There's one member that's going, oh, I'm gonna buy a zoo. Well, not really a zoo. They are gonna buy a nice house with a huge backyard with tons of animals in. And then this person even had a dream. They had this person even had a dream that they bought that house, right? So that's kind of cool. So we're going, ooh, maybe it's a sign we're gonna win, kind of thing, right? But they're I was you guys don't need a zoo, right? Just hang out with the campus and SS kids. Those are a bunch of animals right there. So I'm I don't need a zoo. I just hang out with the SS campus, and it's a zoo in there, right? But isn't it amazing how we haven't I already know we're not going to win, but we haven't won or anything, but it's so hopeful and it's so exciting talking about the future. If we win, what are you going to buy, right? And for me, it's just a fun thing. It's just a fun thing we do together, something to talk about. And I like listening to people when they tell me what they're going to buy with the money. And one of the cool things about that is you kind of get to see what people's future hopes, their dreams, what's important to them all come out, And for me, it's just it's a great fun talking point, and it's just for fun. We all put in $2 each, so it's not even a heavy investment. But I was just it was really, really fun just to talk about these different things. And for me, if I'm going to ask you guys right now. Right, this will be a question that you guys can write in the comment section is, if you won the lottery, so this lottery is $60 million, 5 of us, if we win, splits 5 ways, which is $12 million each, right? if you won $12 million, what would you do with it? That's the question. What would you do with the $12 million, right? So, that's something that I thought it was kind of a fun question. Maybe not the first thing, but what would be the biggest or most expensive thing? And for myself, I think it would just be a house or a place to live. I think that would be the most expensive thing that I would buy. But personally, what I would do with the money, if I had 12 million, I put 10 million into investments. That would pay me money, right? So like even right now, if you just put into a savings account, you might get 5 to 6%, which means if you put $1 million in the bank, you'll get like $1 million in the bank, you get like $50,000 to $60,000 a year just on interest. $50,000 to $60,000, which is a lot of money, right? That's what a normal person actually makes per year. But imagine if you had 12 million, that turns to like $800,000 a year, which means you could just put that all in the bank and you just live off the interest, which is like almost $1 million a year, which is a lot of money, right? So I was like, yeah, I'd probably do that because why would I need to, I would just get the loans and I would just pay it off every month using the interest that I got. And that's how I would live. That's what I would do with it. So I wouldn't even purchase anything. I just put everything in investments, or I might just put 10 million into, can you see that? Can you see like where my mind is going? Like, I know we're not going to win, but in my mind, I'm like, but if I did, what would I do with the money? I'm like, $10 million into, some type of savings and investments that would give me returns of anywhere from 5 to 8%, right? Which would pay me about how much would that be? Yeah, anywhere from like $600,000 to $700,000 a year just in interest, which would be great. And I put the $2 million, and the $2 million I would actually pay off my parents' mortgage. I'd pay off my uncle's mortgage because he was someone that really took care of me before when I was in LA. And those would be just some things that I would do, and that's kind of what I would do with the money. But it's funny because we're not going to win. We're not going to win, but it's really interesting how the human mind works. Actually, there's a really funny conversation during the dinner we had, and there's like me and a campus guy, and then there's two girls there too, right? And we're eating and stuff, and then one of the career girls is like said to the campus guy, "Hey, it's okay to show your feelings." And instantly I was like, "Do not do that. Don't let a girl tell a guy how a guy should be," right? And it was a funny conversation and very, very playful on why guys should or should not show their emotions, right? And I just told her like, "Nah, I don't think guys should be getting advice from women about how a man should be," right? And I just in a relationship, you need at least one of them to be strong. So I'm not going to say that it always has to be the man, because sometimes there are strong women too that are not going to cry, but they keep like the stability. Like, haven't you seen those movies where, there's those movies where like the kid has cancer and the kid's really fighting hard, but if both of the parents just break down and cry, then it makes the child want to cry and maybe get emotional, and then thinks that there's no stability in there. Like, you need one person just to be strong, one person to lean on during that difficult time. But if you have everyone just breaking down and crying, like, it gets nowhere. Right? It's going to be worse if everyone's like, ah, then the emotions kick in, then everyone's going to feel terrible about the situation. You need that one person who is strong. And in most cases, it's usually the guy who tries to be strong, doesn't show their emotions and such. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't show our emotions. I'm just saying that, yeah, don't be so open about it. Like, most guys are pretty good with holding it in or releasing it in a different way. Like I said, for me too, I'll go watch a movie alone, like a really, really sad movie, or like a K-drama or something, and just let the tears come out by myself. Just, all right, this is my time. All right, it's done. Wipe my eyes, and I go back to what I was normally doing, kind of thing. But yeah, and here's the ultimate question. Like, this is a question I give to the girls. Like, I even asked the two girls during the dinner is, do you want to marry someone who's always, like, a man who's always showing their emotions, crying all the time, this, and this? And, like, and guys, don't get me wrong on this. Remember, it's a playful and fun conversation. I use the word sissy. Like, don't be a sissy kind of thing, right? And the question I asked, like, remember, in context of our fun and playful conversation, I asked the girls, do you want to marry a sissy guy? And they're like, no way. So then I said to them, well, why would you want a man to be like someone you wouldn't even want to marry? Like, why would you want the men to be like that? And then the conversation everyone just laughed and it ended there. But I found that to be a very interesting question. Maybe something we could talk about during Provipuff or during Provipuff or the Man Cave, just to see that. And guys, remember tomorrow Provipuff West comes out with their second episode. So I am really, really liking their editing and how they're doing these podcasts. I think it's really fun because they're face to face and stuff like that, and I think it's much, much better. So yeah. So another funny thing happened yesterday. I'm not sure if you guys are like this or your parents like this. Like, so I was talking to my mom, and I'm realizing she's like, she's retired. My mom and my dad are retired, and they just need stuff to focus on. And they just spend money to save money, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, there's this pharmacy that sells like cosmetics and, all the daily life products and stuff like that. And there's like a coupon they got in the mail. And the coupon, it's like that says that if you spend $60 in the store, we'll give you $20 in points, and those points can be used towards anything that you buy for $20. So that's like a third. So you're getting basically 33% back. So I'm like, Mom, you need it? Are you going to use this? Because it's only available today. And then she's like going, well, Dad needs some more, what do you call it? Sunscreen, moisturizer kind of thing. It's like, okay, I'll go buy that. But I'm like, Mom, that's like $30. Yeah, you're only halfway there. And then she's like, oh, okay, just go buy something until it reaches $60. So I was like, oh, okay. So, like I bought a moisturizer and like I ended up buying 2 bags of chips because I needed something to fill in the last $8, right? So I'm just like, I don't know what to buy. So eventually we just, I went there, I bought all those things, and I was like, man, this is what retired people are focused on. Like, they have so many points cards. And do your parents have point cards? Like, they have points cards. They have credit cards, all collecting some type of points to get something free later. Like, even for me getting gas in the car, they will only allow me to get gas at 2 different gas stations because those are the only places where I can collect points. And I just looked at it, I was like, man, like, these companies really, like, they got us, right? And they know human psychology. They know the nature really well. And that made me start to think a little bit, think a little bit more deeply too. Like, how well do we know human psychology that we're able to utilize the human mind so that we can get people to, like, say, listen to the word and stuff like that too. So when you think about it, even the way, like, say, the people accusing Sunstein, they know the human mind, and they're putting stuff out even before the trial on Netflix, on the internet, all these other different things, because they know the human mind really well, right? And they spread things online and on YouTube and TV shows, just getting it into the minds of the public even before the trial begins. So now, all of a sudden, this is why we're protesting, because it's become a trial of public opinion, not on what is based on evidence, right? So when I thought to myself, we need to learn how to do this, because, using human psychology is not cheating or doing things in a wrong way. It's just understanding the human mind, right? Understanding the human mind, enabling ourselves to, by understanding the human mind, knowing how to spread the message more quickly. Like, if you think about it, with like most companies in the world, they're already hiring behavioral psychologists to do things differently in their stores to make us buy things we don't need. Right? We just don't know that they're using these practices, but they're all hiring these people to use them against us, right? Even gaming companies. Why are games so popular and kids never get off games? Because they hire these behavioral psychologists that make the games in a way that get kids addicted and keep playing these things without eating, without resting and stuff like that too. That's just how this social media, it's the exact same thing. And I think that we too need to understand the human mind better. Yes, they're using it in such a negative way, but I think we need to know it better so that we can attract people to the gospel, attract people to God, attract people to this history, right? finding out what people really want or the way that their mind works, so that our messaging can come out in such a way that many people will be exposed to the gospel, right? Like for me, is I think we need some like social media experts to teach this, right? We need some of them. Like, because what worries me is that even if we have a ton of people putting out Sunseem's word, if no one's watching it, it makes no difference, right? If we don't have the right tools and the right way to do it, right? So that is something that I was thinking about. Like, yeah, that is something that we should be kind of working on much more better too. Yeah, this morning, what choice did I make after pre-dawn? Did I go back to sleep or did I get up? And, for me, after pre-dawn, I got all the way into bed. It was so cold this morning. I closed my eyes, but then I was like, yeah. And I was like, I got up and said, let's go eat some vegetables. Let's go eat some raw vegetables and fruits, right? So I ate my breakfast. I made my coffee. I was working on the podcast in the morning, but I didn't go to cafe, but now it's still really, really early. I have like a ton of time before this podcast comes out. So I'm recording comfortably. I didn't go to the cafe in the morning. And, because it wasn't too bad yesterday, doing it at home and making my own coffee and not spending money. And actually, what's interesting is I know this one financial YouTuber named Stephen Graham. And I've seen him when he first came out, and he saves a ton of money, but he never buys coffee. That's the one thing he refuses to buy. He makes it at home super cheap because, for him, coffee is the one thing that he doesn't like wasting his money on. So I was thinking about Stephen Graham while I was making my coffee, but I think what he says is true. If you are not someone who loves coffee, if you're just someone who drinks coffee like my parents, I think it's normal and that people would do that. But yeah, for me, I would rather just buy a coffee machine and make it every day because I think it's really therapeutic making your own coffee, your own lattes, doing it like that. But one thing I do like better about nice cafes is they're quiet, have a nice atmosphere, nice view. And it's just a nice place to wind down my mind, think about nothing, look at nature and stuff. But I don't have that at my house. I just don't, right? So, yeah. And, and here's the one thing that I think girls may never understand about guys is guys are able to kind of sit down, have a cup of coffee, stare out the window, and think about absolutely nothing. Like zero. We can think about nothing in our mind. It's just blank. I'm just staring, and then I get into a zone where it's almost like I'm sleeping with my eyes open, and I'm thinking about nothing. I don't know. I don't think girls can do that, but guys can do it. Guys can absolutely do it, right? So for me, like that's the kind of a wind down time for me. I don't want to think about things all the time. It'd just be too stressful for me. So that is something that I have been thinking that. I did this morning. I did get my coffee. I didn't go to the cafe, so it wasn't as relaxing. But I got everything done early, and I'm recording early right now, so I'm pretty happy right now too. Oh, tomorrow we do have another Friday prayer meeting, right? Friday prayer meeting tomorrow, and guess what the topic is? The topic is internet ministry. Like that is the big thing. And it's interesting how extreme the direction is going towards internet ministry, right? And I wonder, I'm not sure exactly how it's working. I wonder if it'll be more than just getting a bunch of people to just post stuff everywhere, right? And the thing that makes me, because I just talked about this is there going to be some social media expert for Instagram or YouTube or other social media experts on other channels that will weigh in on how to do it well? Because at the moment, there are some Providence members that do have some type of YouTube channel that might have 100, 200,000 subs, but they're not religious. They're not religious YouTubers, right, that are preaching the word and stuff like that too. I think mine is the only one that is somewhat religious, the Espresso with Sky one. And I think it's, I think there's like two or three, but I don't know how popular they are. But religious YouTubers, it's a completely different category. So when I was in Malaysia, there was a famous YouTuber. This person has 1 million subs and a company, social media company, and they approached me about taking on my channel. And one of the things they did say was they didn't want it to be religious because it's a harder group to get into if it's a religious YouTube channel. They wanted more of self-help, guiding people, counseling people, giving people advice on life more than religious stuff. And it's just a harder category to get into. So it will be interesting to see if anyone does break into the religious category, and especially Korea, which I think would be even more difficult. Because I know how religious Koreans are and how they are faithful to their own churches, right? And like there are a couple things that probably people don't know about Korean Christianity, but it's very extreme. Very, very extreme. People stay in their churches. They don't visit other churches. They frown upon people visiting other churches and such. They think that people are they're betraying their church and stuff like that. So, and part of it is because Korea is a place that has a lot of like cults and churches that have negative perception. People are against this church or that church like that too, right? So when I think about that, I actually think that Western countries have a better chance of making like a religious YouTube channel. I think they do, right? Because Westerners love to give their opinions. Like take a look at my Espresso with Sky channel and just look at the comments. People are straight out telling me, you are wrong, or how can you say that? Oh, there is no proof of what you are saying. That is not the answer. This is the answer. Like, they're super opinionated, and they are willing to watch and listen to other YouTubers just to tell their point of view and that they're right and what they believe is better than what I believe, or whatever it is, right? So I actually think that you'll get more people listening in when it comes to like the Western religious people, and I think it'll be a lot easier for that. That's just my opinion there. So I'm not sure what you guys think, but that's what I truly believe. That's what I truly believe, right? So I found that to be quite interesting. But I'm not sure about what you guys think too. But yeah, I'm more so like, it's not easy to make a YouTube channel in the first place. Because remember, in order to monetize your channel, you need to get 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch hours, right? And that's not easy if you only have like, say, one video or 2 or 5 or 10 videos. And they say the average person, the average time it takes to reach 1,000 subscribers, they said, is about 2.5 years. That's what YouTube statistics say right now. It takes about 2.5 years just to get yourself monetized, right? So if you're doing if that's the average, if you can do it under a year, then you know you got something good like that's coming up. You have something good. You're doing something right. And I think more than just thinking about how to get it done, we have to think about what can we do to to do things in a way like the thumbnails and the content, the time of the actual videos that you make, all these are different things. What can we do to make it work out so that we can attract a larger audience, right? Remember, our goal is to hit 1 million. Not just one person, all together to have 1 million members, right? And if I'm part of that right now, my channel there is already like at 4,600. So if it's 4,600, we're already adding 4,600 to it. But I do think that we have to reach a new level. I really, really do. All right. So yeah, interesting. I'm very, very excited to hear what the internet ministry is going to show us, like about how to do internet ministry better or whatnot. All right. Yeah. So let's get into the first break of the day. right, so let's get into today's Q&A Thursday, and we have one really big question. It's a big question because I did mention this last week in last week's Q&A. Sometime last week in the podcast, someone asked me, what are the four main doctrines, right? And it's a good question because, we haven't heard this term in a long time. But what are the four main doctrines? Now, many people who are new might think like, four main doctrines must be like the purpose of creation, the fall, rapture, and times and a half, or something along that line, right? Like those are the four main doctrines. And the answer is no. The four main doctrines, what do they have to do with? The four main doctrines are related to the coming of the Messiah, right? Why? Because in order for us to receive salvation history, we have to meet or believe in the Messiah, right? And because, the Messiah is the core of salvation history, because through the Messiah, we receive salvation. And that's why the Bible is basically written about the Messiah himself, right? And what we need to know is, what are the four main doctrines that talk about the coming of the Messiah? Well, the four main doctrines are Advent, right, which means is the coming of the Messiah, the Advent, judgment of fire, the last days, and resurrection. Those four are the key four main doctrines that will help people to realize and receive the Lord's second coming, because this is how the second coming comes. Now, before we get a little bit deeper into it, I know that there's one question that people do ask, especially when they teach people the former faith. People of the former faith, it's very interesting because they know the prophecies. Well, at least some of them do, but they'll say something like, the judgment of fire, it's talking about the second coming, right? It's a very, very interesting thing that the former faith does. Like, the former faith, God bless them, because they know and they're absolute about Jesus being the Messiah. So anything that goes against Jesus being the Messiah, they have to find a way to make it sound better or make it okay so that they're not going to say something like, then maybe he's not the Messiah. Because think about this. If the Messiah's goal is to fulfill all the prophecies written about him, that's what the Messiah has to do. So remember, in the Old Testament time, there's a bunch of prophecies that came out about Jesus, right? And God, in his wisdom, made these prophecies. And the reason why these prophecies are so important is because there are many people that come as false messiahs, as antichrists. So how do the people of Israel, how are they able to discern between who is right and who is wrong? And it is through the prophecies. So let's just pretend, right, for the sake of this example, that there are 10 prophecies about Jesus, right? And of course, it's being born in Bethlehem and coming from the line of David and fire and clouds and there's these types of prophecies, right? So imagine someone comes and people are unsure, oh my gosh, could this person really be the Messiah? Well, then the Pharisees, Sadducees, teachers of the law will all come and say, all right, so you're saying you're the Messiah, so we want to make sure that we're not following the wrong person. And they know that's something that we have to discern really well. How do I know I'm following the right person? So they'll say, well, were you born in Bethlehem? And the guy will say, check. Like, yeah, I was. All right, check. He's got this prophecy down. 9 more to go. Are you from the lineage of David? Absolutely. Check. Right? So as we're checking down the list, we're going to be able to discern between who is the Messiah and who isn't, because the one who is the Messiah has to fulfill all of them. How do I know, right? Well, look at what Jesus himself says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 and 18. He says, don't think I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. Now, whenever you hear the word law or the prophets and they're like capital L, capital P, it basically means the entire Old Testament. The law refers to the books of Moses, which is the first 5 books in the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, right? And those 5 books are considered the law, big L, okay, first 5 books. And then the prophets with the big P are referring to the remaining books in the Old Testament. Remember, the Old Testament has like 39 books in it. So what we see here is we have the first 5 are the law and the remaining books are the prophets. So whenever you hear Jesus, like when Jesus says, do not think I've come to abolish the law or the prophets, which means the entire Old Testament, I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them, right? So we see in Matthew 5:17, Jesus himself says, no. The Old Testament, I've come to fulfill the entire Old Testament. So he has to fulfill them, right? Look at Luke chapter 24, verse 44. And in Luke 24:44, let's just get this down. 24, verse 44. Let me read this for you. It says, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms," right? So what does Jesus say? Jesus says, everything must be fulfilled that is written about me. Jesus has to fulfill the Old Testament prophecies, which includes fire, which includes clouds, right? However, if people don't know the meaning, the parable of fire, the parable of the clouds, the problem there is that where do they go from there? Like, oh my gosh, well, Jesus didn't come on the clouds. Oh, Jesus didn't come with fire. Oh my gosh, he didn't fulfill them, but he's the Messiah. So they have no other alternative but to say, that's for the second coming. They're talking about the second coming, which I think is very confusing. The reason why it's so confusing is because people in the Old Testament have no idea that there was a second coming. They've only heard about the first one. Jesus didn't even talk about the second coming until way later, like the very, very end of his ministry. There was talks about the second coming, right? So imagine when Jesus first came out, and they're like, everyone's saying, oh, could he be the Messiah? Then the Pharisees, Sadducees, the teachers of the law will all come to Jesus and they'll do the checklist of all the prophecies. And it's very right for them to say that you cannot be the Messiah if you didn't fulfill the judgment of fire. Now, Christians, because Christians already know that he's the Messiah, they can't say he didn't fulfill it. So they have to it's for the second coming. But we look at the scriptures, and the scriptures are all telling us that the law and the prophets must be fulfilled at the time of Jesus. He has to fulfill everything that speaks about him. Like another big verse is Matthew chapter 11, verse 13. Matthew 11:13 says, "For all the prophets in the law," which means the entire Old Testament, prophesied, which means past tense. It's already prophesied until John the Baptist. Now, which one is John the Baptist's prophecy? John the Baptist's prophecy is he's Elijah to come. Where is that prophecy? It is Malachi chapter 4, which is the last chapter in the entire Old Testament, which means everything was prophesied until Malachi, until John being the Elijah. So we see that Messiah is the one that is to fulfill all the prophecies. The problem is if people don't know the Bible very well, they will not know the prophecy of fire and how Jesus fulfilled it, the prophecy of the clouds and how Jesus fulfilled it, the prophecy of the last days and how he fulfilled it, what the real meaning of resurrection is and how he's going to fulfill that also, right? And this is why when we listen to, when we understand this very carefully, we're going to see that, Messiah, the coming of the Messiah is the core to salvation history, is to receive the one that God has sent, receiving the Messiah, because the Messiah is the only way we're able to receive salvation, right? So the first thing we need to do is, first we have to get it straight into people's heads is, he has to fulfill everything. And then the question I'll bring out to them is did he fulfill this? Did he fulfill that? Right? So this is why the four main doctrines is such a huge thing, and Sunseam did all of them in the Sunday message, right? So one thing that another big point that we do need to teach newcomers, and we need to know ourselves is that, remember, when the Messiah comes, the Messiah doesn't come to just say, hey, believe in me. The way you believe in him is through the word, right? So it's wait, but if it's just teaching the same word that we've heard before, then it's going to be so hard. Because imagine the Lord's second coming. Imagine Jesus comes back again and he teaches the exact same thing, I'm Jesus, I died on the cross and I rose again in 3 days, so I'm here to save you, I'm back. That wouldn't convince people to believe in him. So the thing that the Messiah does is the Messiah comes to bring history to the next level. That's why Jesus came to bring it to the level of children. Right? So when you read a verse say John 16:25, it says, though I've been speaking figuratively, a time is coming when I'll no longer use this kind of language, but will tell you plainly about my Father, which means that when he comes back, in the past, it was figurative, it was parables, it was metaphors and similes, allegories. But when I come again, I will teach you plainly, which means the level of the word is raised and he'll start giving you more of the answer. And if you look in the same chapter, John 16, another really, really good verse that we read is like John 16, 12 and 13. Jesus is like, I got so much more to say to you. I got so much more to say to you, more than you can now bear. And this is kind of why you realize that let me give you an example of one of the things Jesus could have taught that they could not bear at that time is the Holy Spirit. That is something that they could not bear at that time, right? So you see that Jesus had much more to say, go deeper into the word, giving you more answers, and that's what the Messiah does. And that's why when we have the Lord's second coming, at this time, even right now, the words we receive are at an even higher level. How do I know? Look at, think of, if you're someone, I was going to say, raise your hands if you're from the former faith, and I'm going to be like, I can't even see that. So, but yeah, think about it to yourself. If you're from the former faith, like myself, I'll give you my experience. When I heard the word, it was mind-blowing. I was flabbergasted. I was like, what? I've never heard answers like this that finally made sense. It completely reshaped my mind and my heart. And when I heard these words, I'm like, whoa, okay, this is another level. Like, I couldn't help it. It was so deep. I was like, this is so crazy, right? So, even for me, and for those of you out there who are, you can guys write in the comments below if you're from the former faith and you listened to the word and your mind was blown. Especially those that are from the former faith, we had answers that were satisfying enough for us in the past. But when we heard these words, it is like cataclysmic shaking of faith, of the old faith, but setting in a new foundation for this complete Testament time, right? And of course, I think another big thing that people have to, they have to re-educate themselves in, of course, is the principle of recurring history, right? So the history is recurring, right? And it's happening over and over again. It's repeating itself. And this is an important point because when it comes to Jesus's prophecies for the first and second coming, the prophecies are the same. Like fire in the Old Testament for the first coming, and then there's fire for the second coming, right? So it's like, what? Like it's like, whoa, it's the exact same thing. And, so what we need to understand is if we can figure out how it happened the first time, the first coming, we're able to understand how it happens the second coming, right? History is always repeating itself. So let's get it, so what are the four main doctrines? It is the Advent, the judgment of fire, last days, and resurrection, right? So, let's take a look at some of the prophecies. When you look at the Advent, like the Advent of the Messiah, there's a couple things that we need to know because remember, we already know about reoccurring history. So if history is recurring, then we're like, okay, so we can understand how Jesus will come back again or how the Messiah will come again by looking at the first coming, right? And you'll look at something like Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, which is in the past, but remember, history repeats itself. And Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 and 2 talks about Jesus coming from the lineage of King David, which means he comes as a human being on the earth. But verse 2 is the key that says, but the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him, right? So coming from the lineage, coming from the earth, right? So there's one big prophecy that we have to make sure when it comes to the Advent. Number one is he must be born as a man with the Spirit of the Lord resting upon him. How else do I know this? Well, we learned in this week's message, Micah chapter 5, verse 2, he's born in Bethlehem, right? So he's actually born on the earth. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 is another huge prophecy about Jesus is he will be born from a woman, right? And then the second scriptures that we look at that is very, very powerful, like when it comes to the coming of the Messiah, it says that God himself is coming, right? So this is something that's a lot of people get confused. It's like, oh my gosh, God is coming. So you have this this perception that, oh my gosh, God himself is coming. And that's like in the Judgment of Fire lecture, like Isaiah 66, 15 and 16, right? The Lord is coming with fire and angry, right? And according to the prophecies, the Israelites believed that the Lord God himself would come and judge with fire and sword and deliver the Israelites from their enemies, right? So there's another thing when it comes to the coming of the Advent lesson. It is God coming down, but of course we know that it is the Spirit of God resting on a human being because we get into the clouds lecture, right? It says he is riding on the clouds. That's Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. And of course, in Matthew 24, verse 30, it talks about the second coming, also saying he's coming on the clouds, right? So the Son of Man in Daniel 7:13 is not a regular person, right? And in verse 14, it says that all nations will worship him and his dominion is everlasting. The Son of Man is referring to the Messiah, obviously, right? So we see that these are big points and how are they fulfilled? And we obviously teach them in these lessons of how those three major prophecies are fulfilled. Born as a man, that God himself is coming, and he's riding on the clouds, and we teach them how we teach people how this actually came true, right? The second thing that the second lesson that the second of the core doctrines is going to be which one should we get? Judgment of fire, right? So judgment of fire, we all know this one too. It's like, you know, when he comes, everything will be destroyed, and we know that this is such a powerful lesson because it shows that it's not literal fire, and it is about the fire of the word. And this is also a very, very powerful lesson that we teach to help people understand that the word is fire and that the Messiah comes with the word, not actually literally destroying and killing people. The third of the four main doctrines is the last days, which includes like the ideal world, new heaven and new earth kind of concepts too, right? And in the last days, like if you look at like 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 10 through 13, that says we're looking forward to a new heaven, new earth. Revelation chapter 21 says the exact same thing. The first heaven, first earth had passed away, and then there's a new heaven and new earth and stuff like that too. So we see that Jesus comes with fire to destroy the earth and the heavens, and then a new earth will come here. Remember, there's a last days lecture that I know that you guys already know. So what does that mean? It basically means we know what the last day symbolizes: the ending of one time and the beginning of a new, the ending of wickedness and the beginning of righteousness. The last days happen multiple times in the Old Testament, like for instance, the time of Noah, right? It says that I will end the earth and all people, but it didn't end everyone. Life went on, right? So you see that the last days was constantly happening, but not in the way that human beings think. Human beings think linear with a beginning and an end, where God is circular, right? Which is forever. So if you live forever, there's no such thing as a literal end because you live forever. Even when like, if we die and go to hell, we live forever in hell, right? So, if you look at like the biggest difference, like one of the big things that people talk about is the new heaven and the new earth. Like it shows in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13 that, we're all looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth. And it's not talking literal. Why? Because heaven hasn't done anything wrong. Why would you destroy the heavens? Like why would the heavens and the earth be destroyed? Well, it's not literally talking about the literal earth and heaven. It's talking about people's perception and concept of the earth and heaven. Earth is the human position, and the heavens is God's position, right? So the new heaven and the new earth is, the new heaven is, I looked at God as a master, but he is no longer master. I destroy that concept in my head. So that old concept of God being master is destroyed by fire, by the words of God. And I learned, oh my gosh, God is my father. And then I have a new heaven that opens up, right? And on the earth, what happens is I no longer look at myself as a servant. And as I learn the words from Jesus, Jesus teaches me, and I realize at that moment, I am not a servant, I am a child of God. And I destroy the old earth, and a new earth is created, right? So when you look at it this way, remember, most of the things that we're explaining when it comes to fire and the clouds and these different things, it's all spiritual, right? And this is why when you understand this really deeply, it's so easy to say, oh, okay, so this is why, so Jesus did fulfill all these things. Jesus is the Messiah, and we have absolutely no doubt, right? The last one of the four is resurrection. And, of course, we heard this over and over again for the last couple of weeks, and it's about the spiritual resurrection, right? So, there's a spiritual and physical resurrection. There is the literal physical resurrection, which Jesus only physically resurrected 3 people, right? If physical resurrection was that big, why would he only resurrect 3? And of the 3 people, why resurrect these people who are not really that important? Like, what I mean is, if you resurrected Moses, David, and Abraham, every Jew would follow Jesus. Like, oh my gosh, it's Moses, it's Abraham. Like, everyone would freak out. But instead, it's Lazarus, right? The centurion's daughter, was it? And then like Jairus' daughter, and like the widow's, like, it's 3 people that didn't really affect anyone else, and they died anyways, kind of thing, right? But, you know, learning about the resurrection is very, very powerful, because like I said in this week's message, if we know that it's the spirit that resurrected, then we know it's the spirit that comes back, which means we're not waiting for a physical body to come, right? So when you look at these 4 main doctrines, it's that powerful, right? When you see that these are the 4 main ones, that if you can teach these 4 super powerfully, what happens? Then people are able to realize the time period much better, right? So yeah, these are the 4 main doctrines. I hope this helps you guys out a lot, right? The 4 main doctrines, very, very important points. And I hope it's something that you guys like, oh, this is what the 4 main doctrines, it's about the coming of the Messiah, because the Messiah is the key to salvation history. If you could teach these four main doctrines well, this is when people realize this history much more cleanly, more clearly. The transition's much better, all right? So if you have any more questions about the 4 main doctrines, please let me know. What are they again? Advent, Judgment of Fire, the last days, and resurrection. Those are the 4 big ones. And of course, resurrection is very, very similar to rapture, because rapture is the last resurrection. And clouds are a part of it, right? I'm not sure if you guys have heard the Advent lecture. There is a lesson called Advent. I don't think it's taught that much anymore, to be honest, because inside the Advent lecture is the clouds too. Clouds is also part of the parables lecture, but it's a big part of the Advent lecture also. Okay, so if you have any comments, questions, whatever it is, please let me know, and you can write it in below so I can answer anything else if you have any. If you have anything you want to add, or like verses that you want me to go over again. Okay. So there it is, guys. That is today's Q&A Thursday. It was one question, but a very, very big one, because it's about the 4 main doctrines. We haven't heard that term in a long time, but I hope you guys really enjoyed that. All right, so let's move on into the second break of the day.
You showed me all of your heart, even before I gave mine. That's why I can't help myself. I'll always follow you. You showed me how to believe, so that my faith became strong. That's why I can't help myself. I'll always follow you. More than 1,000 words from anyone, your word is all I need. Your word is what I will believe. More than 1,000 words from anyone, I'll put my faith in you. Your word is what I will believe. You showed me hope in this world, so I put my hope in you. That's why I can't help myself. I'll always follow you. You showed me unending love, came to me and loved me first. That's why I can't help myself. I will always love you most. More than 1,000 words from anyone, your word is all I need. Your word is what I will believe. More than 1,000 words from anyone, I'll put my faith in you. Your word is what I will believe. true. More than 1,000 words from anyone. Your word is all I need. Your word is what I will believe. More than 1,000 words from anyone. I'll put my faith in you. Your word is what I will believe.
Okay, so let's get into our final segment of the day. And of course, on this wonderful Thursday, I have an opportunity to preach, right? This is a time, the sermon's in the sky, my realization, things that the Holy Spirit has taught me during the last couple of days or the weeks that I'm able to share with you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy this as usual. This is Sermons in the Sky. And today I'm going to talk about loving your enemies. So I was listening to this podcast on YouTube, all right? I was listening to this podcast. It was a sports podcast. And the reason why sports podcasts are like really on fire right now, for those of you guys don't know, because the NFL has started. American football, the most important sports season of the year. It is the most popular, makes the most amount of money. Everyone watches this, right? Like I've told you guys before, every year when it comes to the top 100 broadcasts in America, 98 of the 100 are NFL games. Not NBA, not Major League Baseball, it's NFL. So what happened in week 1 in sports, there was this superstar quarterback that got injured. Like he tore his Achilles tendon. He's gone for the whole season. It took 4 plays for him to be gone. And what was interesting is there was someone that tweeted that they were happy that he got injured severely. And this is someone who's been criticizing this quarterback because this quarterback refused to get vaccinated. So in America, I was just listening to this. It was just very interesting to hear that some people are wishing like injury and harm on others because they think differently. And of those guys, if you've seen the news in America, it's such a big thing, taking a political side. And you take your side and you hate the other side. And you've determined your friendships. You've determined your thoughts on what political side your friends and family are on. And as I was listening to it, it kind of made me think about the situation that we're going through right now. You know, the big spiritual Oppenheimer that happened in March. And interesting thing is, I'm thinking to myself is, what should we call it, that moment in time? Like I call it the spiritual Oppenheimer because it's the same time the movie came out about the atomic bomb. Should we call it the Great Divide, the Great Schism, the Judas moment, the Great Betrayal? I'm not sure, but it happened. And one thing that we should understand is that moment that we just went through in March is so big that in the future, it'll be known as something. Like people, if we're able to coin that name, like from the future, everyone will talk about, oh, it was the spiritual Oppenheimer. Oh, do you remember the spiritual Oppenheimer? Oh, do you remember the Judas moment? Do you remember the Great Betrayal, right? It's like people are gonna call it by a name. A name is going to be coined. I'm not sure what to call it yet. Right? I'm not sure what you guys think about it, but it happened. And after that happened, there were some really strong emotions on both sides. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground of feelings towards people literally in the middle. And for me, my opinion is there is no middle. And if people think they're in the middle, I don't think there is a middle. I think being in the middle is a stance of not having faith in any side. And I do believe, just my opinion, that eventually these people will find a way to leave. Because there's no conviction. It's always wanting to play it safe. And I think it's a dangerous point to take in life. When it comes to something this big about salvation, right? There are some things in life that you can take a middle, like when it comes to salvation, that's the biggest thing. And there are some things in life you can take a middle stance because they don't affect you much. But this situation is not one of those things. It's huge. And in the end, if you take a middle stance, I just feel that you'll have massive regret at the end, regardless of what happens. Because if you're in the middle ground, think about it. If you think Sunstein is guilty, then you'll have massive regret that you were in Providence and you wasted so much of your life. Or if Sunstein comes out right, then you'll have massive regret for not believing in Sunstein with conviction. You know, if you take a strong stance on one side, I think that's the better way. Until someone proves it, why would I leave my side? Why would I leave my wife until someone can absolutely prove that they cheated on me? Why would I take another side? Why would I stand in the middle and not trust my own wife? If you stand up for Sunstein, that's the power of conviction. And when the time comes, when truth comes out and everything works out, then you can stand comfortably, confidently next to Sunstein no matter what and say, I stood by you the entire time. And if you're on the other side, because you truly believed it to be true, if you're right, then you'll be proud to have been on the right side. However, if you stood on the wrong side, you could still repent. And you say, yeah, I really believed it. These were good friends of mine. They said this, and I really believed it. Once the truth comes out, you can say that, I truly believe this side. I made a mistake, right? But if you're in the middle, you're not accepted by either side. You just never took a stance. And you might think to me, like, say, Sky, like, don't you think it's a little bit harsh? I'm like, well, I don't think it's harsh. I want you to think about it this way. It's about character. It's about the way you are. Have you ever thought to yourself why Jesus chose Paul? Paul was not in the middle. Paul was the strongest advocate against Jesus. He heard this and that, and he believed it. He didn't know any better. But he stood convicted and even went to the point of killing Christians. Why would Jesus choose him? That is someone, once they know, once they understand, they will take action strongly of what they believe in. Jesus chose Paul because he knew that if Paul flipped to Jesus' side, can you imagine what type of actions he would take? We don't even need to imagine. Paul he did actions that not even the disciples who lived with Jesus could do. If you choose someone who's lukewarm or in the middle, in the end, they do nothing. Even when they come back, they kind of can't take a side. You get someone like Paul, someone strongly advocating the other side. And if they turn and they come to Providence, they will take action with fire and they will be unstoppable like Paul. There is much respect we must take. We must give to those who take a stance on what they truly believe. They do it because they really believe it. I'm not saying those that are following the crowd. I'm talking about those that truly believe it. They took their stance. Because these people, if they come back, they'll become like Paul. Now the question is, do we know who will come from the other side, who will come back? And the answer is no. We don't even know if anyone will come back. We don't. But if one of them does, think about Paul. He did things that none of the apostles who lived with Jesus could do. And for this reason, I tell all of you now, Do not hate the other side. Do not think that we are better. Do not wish for bad things, harm, or injury to happen to them. We are not here to judge. We are here to do our mission, to love God. We are here to do what God has called us to do. We're not here to waste our time talking bad about the other side or what they did here or there. We are not here to start wishing harm, injury, or even death to those against us. If you think about that, that's completely against what the Bible says. We are not called to hate. We are called to love even our enemies. Look at society today. They think it's okay to hate each other because of what they believe in politically. Don't you think that's ridiculous? But then now look at our situation. We are standing at the edge of history. And in the near future, when we die and stand before God, do you think God will look upon you favorably if you say that you hated and wished death and harm upon your enemies? Even Sunseam right now is telling us, pray. Pray for those against us. Pray for those in trial. Yet some of us still hold hatred towards them. Sunseam said that in the end, this is what Sunseam said, if you knew what hell was like, you would wish hell upon no one, even your worst enemy. It is that terrible. It is a place where all the sins of your life would be taken care of in just one day in hell, but you have to be there forever. Love your enemies. If you just love the people that love you, even the wicked are doing that. Let's pray the proper prayers. Let's not just think about the easy prayers like praying for Sunseam, praying for your church, praying for Providence, praying for your family, praying for the people that are good to you. But pray the powerful prayer that moves God's heart. That even though you may feel something negative or feel something that's so bad in your heart, you will pray for them. It's not a time to hate. We have too much of that in the world. If we do things the same as the world does, do you think that the ideal world, heaven on earth, will ever be created? It won't. Pray for your enemies. Love your enemies. And this is when the kingdom on earth will be fulfilled. I hope this is something that really resonates in your hearts and helps us to pray an even deeper prayer. Because, you kind of just look at what's happening in the world, and it's not what God wants. He doesn't want it this way. And especially in Providence, what God says is, this week's message, if you are not united even in Providence, God cannot be with you. We got to become one here. We're not just hating our enemies, we're hating people inside of Providence. So let's pray the right prayers. Let's do the right thing. And I hope that all of us here will really be able to get ourselves to that next level. All right? So there it is, guys. That is today's Sermons in the Sky about loving our enemies. And I hope that all of you gained something from it. Leave a comment below if you have anything you want to add to it too. So I hope that everyone just have an amazing and awesome Thursday. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm good